Good evening. Today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, the last day of February, or last day of January before we start February. So tonight we're doing our little worst sports memory show. So I hope everybody has packed in their memories. We got a special guest tonight. We'll introduce him later. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Couchcasters podcast. I'm your host, Jeff. This is Scott, Parker, Cameron, and Murph. We're here this week to talk about our worst sports memories. But before we get going, I want to introduce our special guest. A lot of you on Twitter, Instagram know him, especially if you're a BAM like we are. If you're a Roll Tide loving BAMs like we are, you've come across him on Twitter, on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram. We're going to welcome in our good buddy. Just met him, but he's already a good buddy because he went and got him a bourbon. So welcome to the show, CRUZ OXENREIDER. What's up,
guys?
CRUZ?
Hi.
Thanks for joining us, brother.
Pleasure's all
mine.
mine.
Backstory. During this coaching carousel and our hatred of Pete Golding, I threw CRUZ a random DM one day just with some info, like when Charles Kelly took the new job, I sent him a message that was just like, hey, man, first domino has fallen. And CRUZ writes me back like we text all the time. So he just hits me back. And unfortunately for him, I've been pestering him ever since. And then I just threw caution to the wind one day and asked him if you want to be on the show. So welcome to the show, CRUZ. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
No, of course. DMs are always open. I know a lot of people. I know that's not the case for a lot of people, but I actually enjoy people reaching out and talking, and it's how I've been able to make like really good connections. Thanks for having me on. I haven't done one of these in a while. I'll make sure to explain later, but I'm excited to do this. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. So
thanks, bro.
let's talk some
first
memories.
Things first. We raise our glass. Whatever liquor you're drinking, whatever you're drinking.
Shout out Maker's Mark, sponsors.
I'm not sponsored, but I got a little Gentleman Jack.
There you go. Yeah, unfortunately,
he did not sponsor me, but he should.
Makers was my first big, pretty big sponsor for the podcast. So I have just stayed loyal. So anything Maker's Mark related is generally like what I'll go with.
So question, how did you get sponsored? How did you get your pod sponsored by Maker's Mark? Was this just you networking? Did you know somebody? Did you just
tell us what to do to get sponsored by Maker's Mark?
Yeah, we'd love that.
I just ended up being able to connect with the right people. I had a chance. I've been very lucky, I would say, with starting out. Just now thinking about it, it's been started the first original podcast December of 2020. And then it's kind of blown, and then it kind of blew up from there. And then was able to just make connections, and people for whatever seem to really like the show, which I was pretty happy about. And so were sponsors. And so we've been lucky enough to work with DraftKings, been lucky enough to work with Maker's Mark, Christopher Mobley, really great clothing brand. I think one of my other original sponsors was My Bookie back in the day, which, but it's just been the craziest thing in the world. I never thought I'd have like a podcast sponsored by like an alcohol that I'm pretty sure I've already paid for that sponsorship with. So it's just all come full circle. It really has.
Somebody somewhere has plenty paid for that, right?
Mm-hmm. Shout out mom and dad for paying for college bar tabs.
Absolutely. Is you and Nick still doing it when you guys get back in the studio? Is Nick
yeah. Yeah. So we'll make an announcement soon, sooner than later. We have some fun plans coming up. We've had some guests lined up that we're really excited to do. We're taking the show kind of like in a newer direction. Gonna kind of do some things that we weren't able to do originally, some creative and show structuring aspects of it. But yeah, Nick, Bond, Wyatt, we're all still here. We're still in a group chat. We still put out stuff all the time on social media. So that's not changing at all. We're just going in a couple different directions. And so we're really thankful for the people we've had the opportunity to work with over the last year. But I'm really excited what we have coming up.
And that's great. That's great to hear. So you're just a big time BAM like the rest of us five, and we spend most of our time here talking BAM stuff. We try to branch out to other SEC stuff, but it always cycles back to five BAMs talking about Bama stuff. I think our best show is right after the Tennessee screw job. I went on about a 5-minute rant after that game to open up the show. I just let fly on everything I thought was crap about that game. But, this is kind of what we do here. We just get some BAMs together, talk Bama stuff, and enjoy doing it. So that's really what we're about here.
No, yeah. No, we're the same. We try and be universal with what we do as well. However, though, when you have 4 Alabama grads in one podcast together,
I think we gets 5 and counting you.
Yeah, it gets a little bit homerish. So we've tried to really kind of branch out from it. I'm sure most people know that I didn't grow up an Alabama fan. I actually grew up a Gator. A lot of those people know. Yeah, I grew up a Florida Gator. I actually went to the University of Florida my freshman year of college. But I grew up in Mobile, Alabama.
Okay.
And so my Alabama fandom from transferring going to school there really kind of took over in about 2011. And I've always been like a huge college football guy. I mean, even not being at Alabama, I still appreciated what they were historically from, the Bear Bryant, Gene Stalling days. And then you guys had that nice little run in 2005 with Shula before hell broke loose. But I mean, I've just like, I've always respected good college football. Alabama, or when Alabama is good, that college football, it's good. It's a blue blood. So I have like a little bit of I'm still somewhat a homer, but I can also look in and talk about college football, not being blinded only because like I can separate the two. Like I can.
Yeah.
So now the Saints,
objective.
Now the Saints, no, completely not. I am the biggest homer you'll ever meet for the New Orleans Saints. Like every year is our year. We're going to the Super Bowl. I sound like a Dallas Cowboys fan every time I say next year is our year. Andy Dalton's the GOAT. Like it's that is
a Dallas fan now.
Yeah, that is where I'm just not rational whatsoever.
Well, we're me and Scott here are big Steeler fans. Murph over here is a Dolphins. He's fins up. I don't know what Cam and Parker are. I don't know if they're got an NFL squad or not, but
wherever the Bama players are.
Yeah, well, I've been a Titans fan.
It's everywhere now.
Oh yeah,
with Derrick Henry
everywhere now. You're right. So let's just let's get into our subject matter. What we came to talk about here tonight, which was our worst sports memories. It can be Bama related. It can be anything related. Like I said in that message, Cruz, like you're a Saints fan. I'm sure you got several. The non-pass interference call on Roby Coleman in that game was probably one of the worst.
I
probably would have blown a gasket had that happened in a Steeler game.
So I've had the unfortunate experiences of being at a few of those Saints games. I'll put it like this. So I'll start with the 2018 NFC Championship game. That was the worst sporting event I've ever attended. I'm a season. My family were season ticket holders for the Saints. I've been going to Saints games for years. It was the day was perfect. Like, it was a perfect day in New Orleans. We got there. The crowd's incredible. It feels like it's 2009. We're about to go back to the Super Bowl. We're gonna go win it in Atlanta. Make Falcons fan on suicide watch. Like, it's going to be like the greatest day. We kicked their ass all day. They incredibly kicked their ass. And then we just kept letting them go back in the game. And I sense like a fear of like, we're not going to win. Like, we're going to blow this. And then a couple minutes left in the game, Drew Brees throws like this perfect 40-yard bomb to like Ted Ginn, who drops anything if he's and double coverage, catches the most unbelievable pass I've ever seen on like the 10-yard line. I'm like, this is God literally taking the Saints to the Super Bowl. Oh, I booked my flight to Atlanta after that play. I'm not even joking. I booked a flight to Atlanta after Ted Ginn caught it for 40 yards. I'm not even kidding. That was like the furthest past Drew Brees has thrown in like 5 years. And so like everything, and then it was the most, it wasn't even the Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara, it was the Ted Ginn. So I'm like watching this, and I'm sitting in the opposite end zone of where it happens. And where are we sitting? So like where we normally sit, we're like in the lower left side of the end zone. And so probably about like 13 rows away from the field. And and we're all assuming, because we're going nuts and we're hearing everyone else go nuts and we can't really see. And we're just assuming that we just can't see the flag. And then when we noticed that like the field goal unit's coming out, we went nuts. And when they showed that replay on the Jumbotron,
I've never seen anything like it.
I've been to the Steve Gleason pump block. I have been to the Saints going to the Super Bowl against the Vikings. I've been there when it went through Alshon Jeffrey's hands into Marshawn Lattimore's hands. I have heard the Superdome as loud as it could possibly be. I have never heard it so loud just from boos. It shook, and it just like the air got sucked out, and then we couldn't stop them. We had a chance to stop them, couldn't stop them. They go down, they kick like a 56-yarder or something. Like, it felt like it was from midfield. They kick it, goes in, we go to overtime. And then the play that never gets talked about, and the play that probably just destroys me, we get the ball to start overtime, and we call this shot play. And it's the same play Drew Brees actually broke the all-time passing record that year. Yeah. It's like it's this curl fake to Michael Thomas. And Traquan Smith, who was a rookie that year, it's a bump and go route where he's wide open one-on-one on the safety. Well, Drew gets hit and an illegal hands to the face that never gets called, and then it gets intercepted. But if you go back and watch that, Traquan Smith is actually literally running wide open in the middle of the field. He's going to walk in for a touchdown, and then we go to the Super Bowl. And it gets picked. We stop them. They kick another field goal from midfield, and it just – I've never been to a sporting event that's made me cry physically. Yeah. Now, that was the only one that has. Like, I just sat in my seat in disbelief, hands over my face, drank my beer, and I eventually had to get told by security, it's like, hey, we're clearing out the stadium. And I just sat days later. I just sat there. I was like, I have had my heart broken by women. I've been told no so many times. I have like lost out on opportunities. Nothing has ever hurt me worse than that day. And it is like, and I never will forget. That's why I think the NFL is a little bit rigged. And like last weekend should kind of show you that. And now people are losing their mind. By saying like, oh my God, the NFL is so rigged. The officiating has been terrible. It's like, oh, where were you guys after the NFC Championship game? Yeah. It's been like this.
That's what I've been telling these guys. I get follow the money. Follow the money. It'll never lie.
Follow the script, because I guarantee it's like, and it's so funny too, because there's a Barstool podcast called Microdosing, and PFT and Arian Foster went into it today. They get a script at the beginning every season, and in practice they're not really running plays, they're perfecting the script so it looks real. that is
very good.
Yeah. So it is. That is the most painful memory. Alabama, like, yeah, it's like losing sucks. I get it.
Yeah.
I was at the Kick Six. That was was that 2013? So yeah, that was my junior year. That one was rough, but I had a friend from high school who was on that Auburn team. His name is Jay Prosh. He was the fullback.
Yeah.
And,
Fullback.
Yeah, he's another Mobile kid. We used to go to church together.
I remember him.
With the UMS right. I was happy for him. And some of my high school friends went there, and I was like, if I wasn't an Alabama fan, this would be the coolest play I've ever seen in my entire life. Because it is. It's one of the greatest plays in sports. Not just college football, but all sports.
I'm not a Malzahn guy, but that was one of his best coaching moves.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah.
It was putting him back there to return that.
Oh, it was incredible. But yeah, sick. that was, I would say that for Bama, but I'm just like, that's just a miracle. It's not like we lost it. That was just like anything that could go wrong just went wrong. And everything that went right for Auburn just went right. And then they blew a 24-3 lead in the Natty. So it all made up for it.
They sure did. They sure did. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was when I was going through my head about my worst sports moment, obviously the Kick Six came to mind, but that Jordan-Hare voodoo is so real.
Auburn Jesus is real.
You could pick. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Jarrett Holmes game in 96 or 97, or the Ed Sissom fumble, whatever year that was, 97 maybe, and Jordan-Hare. Just random stuff, like while we're throwing passes, when we have the lead and Auburn has no timeouts, and all we have to do is run the ball with Sean 3 times and the game's over, but we threw to the fullback who fumbled it. It's just random stuff. Mac Jones throwing 2 pick sixes in that game that year. I mean, he had one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen an Alabama quarterback have. But that game in Jordan-Hare, he throws 2 pick sixes. I mean, when was the last time that happened?
And one of them was a 99-yarder.
One of them bounced off Najee's back and went the other way.
Yeah.
Because somebody didn't pick up the blitzer and Mac had to throw it quick and Najee hadn't turned his head yet. I mean, just weird stuff. The Bryce Young game, we had 3 points in 4 quarters. I mean, come on.
I think that was more of a Bill O'Brien kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he made up for it. But that one, though, I will say the 3 points in Jordan-Hare also gave us one of the greatest drives in Alabama football history, Bryce. So
I agree.
Totally agree.
And I'm used to seeing them embarrass us there. It was kind of nice to be able to return the favor.
Thank
so
you.
I kind of enjoyed that.
I mean, the 4 overtimes like that. You talk about the most stressful Thanksgiving ever. Like, I went from having my parents ask, when are you going to settle down and get married, to then having to watch Alabama Auburn and 4 overtimes the next day. Like, Jesus, the amount of alcohol I had to drink that weekend to get over it. I mean, it was awful. I mean, but there's something about the Iron Bowl in Jordan-Hare, which this year in Jordan-Hare again, Hugh Freeze is there. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Auburn coming into this year. I really like that Ashford kid. I think I'm glad Tank Bigsby's not there anymore, but Auburn always has something going on. I think Hugh Freeze is just a guy who has always been able scheme wise to have Nick Saban's number. So like this year, definitely need to see who we get on defense. Because God, I hope it's Pruitt. And I've been hearing things, and I know that Saban's going to bat for him, and they're doing all this. So if it's Pruitt, I'm fine. I'm okay. But like, I'm starting to get a little bit worried coordinator wise, especially after today losing out on the Washington guy. Yeah,
I heard that he showed up and needed an offer before he went back, and
he had a number. He had a number from Washington. This is what I was told by a few people, and I've been able to make some pretty good sources here lately. So, and they haven't let me down yet. He had a number from Washington given to him before he left. So he told Washington he was going to Tuscaloosa, went there. I don't think the numbers really matched up, and Saban had some more interviews lined up ready to go. I don't know who those people are. I've heard a few different people, but until I can actually confirm that they're coming to Tuscaloosa, I won't say who. But I just think there was too big of a time gap / I don't think the number matched up. So I think that was where it was. Because look, Washington has a chance to win the Pac-12 next year if they get. And I know USC is going to probably go in as like a top 3 team to start, but They had the number 2 offense in the country last year. Not a lot of people realize that. And I think where they're at, and they have a great, great college quarterback already.
Penix.
Yeah, Penix is good. He transferred from Indiana, went to Washington, started out a little slow, and then he just took off at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Like he just went off. And so you figure you have Oregon, who I think Oregon's going to be good next year. I think USC is going to be the favorite. UCLA, they've been able to recruit well. And then we don't know what Colorado's going to be. So
they're going to be better. We know that.
Yeah, and Utah's always a solid program. So I think the Pac-12 next year has a chance to be probably the second best conference in college football next year. And I hate saying that, but it's probably true.
As long as Caleb Williams there, USC is going to be a force.
Oh my God, I can't wait for the Saints to tank for Caleb Williams. I gladly if we don't pull off like a miracle trade, like for Bryce or CJ Stroud. It could have happened. I'm just not holding my breath. I'm okay sucking for a year to go get Caleb Williams, 100%.
You posted a picture of Bryce in a Saints jersey recently, and I was like, that kid looks pretty good in that Saints jersey. I'm not going to lie.
He does. I think, but with the signing of Bama, former Bama legend today, D'Amico Ryans, I think Bryce is pretty much signed, still delivered to go to.
I mean, New Orleans would have to trade out their ass to get up high enough to pick him at 1 because Houston's taking him at 2.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's going to be the tough one. So even though we have a first round pick now, and we have a first round pick next year, which I don't know what this offseason is going to lead. And so like last year, like after we traded our first round pick to go get a Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, which I think those picks are going to be home runs for the Saints, especially Chris Olave, who had a fantastic year with Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. He was still putting up wide receiver 1 numbers. And then you have no one expected the Saints to be a bottom tier team this year. So everyone was picking them to win the NFC South, possibly go to the wild card. They were supposed to be everyone's sleeper team. So when we traded that pick, I was thinking like, it sucks. Like, but I mean, it's not that bad losing out on the 24th pick. No, we lost a top 10 pick, and that's what sucks. So that's my one risk of doing it again, because I don't know what this team will be like next year. I don't know who's still even going to be on this team. I don't think Michael Thomas will. I don't think Cam Jordan will. I think Mark Ingram's going to retire. And I wouldn't be surprised if we try and move on from Alvin Kamara and get some picks. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, you gotta sell while their stock's high. Some of these guys, you can't hang on to them too long. I hate that about Cam Jordan. I really like Cam Jordan.
I think Cam will give the option to retire, take a huge pay cut, and retire a Saint, or let him walk. But I would that would hurt, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Steelers need D lineman, Fonz.
He'd be great.
Cam Jordan.
Oh, him and Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, that would be fantastic. That'd be
a nice defensive line right there.
He already looks good in black and gold, so just take him in black and yellow.
I mean, that's true. That's true. So, all right. So, Parker, you've been thinking about this today. What's your worst sports memory?
Are we doing both best and worst, or just worst?
No, just worst.
Just worst right now.
There's no happiness on this show.
At least this week.
That'll be next.
Although you're on the show, CRUZ, so that's happy. So
yeah, but I'm kind of sad now.
I have to say, it's probably either I have to double on CRUZ. Probably either the 2013 kick six, or I was at the 2010 cam back and I was sitting in the zone, and I thought we were just cruising. We were cruising, and then I see us. There's 3 things that I noticed, and I was like, even as a young fan, you're just like, okay, this is not good signs. We go up 24-3, and then we fumble. Then Mark Ingram fumbles it straight to the back of the end zone.
I still cannot believe that. Like, I don't get how the physics don't line up.
Or Trent Richardson, while we're passing on the 3-yard line, and Trent Richardson drops a walk-in touchdown. That one's a miss.
That was Jahmyr Gibbs this year against Tennessee when he dropped that. Now, why we were passing the ball those last 3 plays against Tennessee, I don't know. But the fact that he dropped that one, that took me back to that.
that was right into that zone I was going in, so that in the north end zone, and I see him just drop it, and I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good. And then some pass, I can't remember if it was a deep pass to like Lutzenkirchen. And then Mark Barron goes up to try to get it. And at the time, nobody knew, but he tore his pec muscle. And
he couldn't lift his arm.
And he couldn't lift his arm. He played the rest of the game when it should have been out of the game.
Dude, when that happened in real time, I was so mad at Barron. I was like, Saban needs to cut him before the game's even over. Of course, I didn't realize that he couldn't lift his arms. But at the time, I was like, all he has to do is reach his hand up, and that's a pick or a deflection. And he just like jumped in the air and watched it go right over his head, and the dude's gone for a touchdown. I was like, cut his side out. I'm like screaming at the TV. Like, I couldn't believe that happened. That was that Jordan Hare voodoo and Brian Denny that day.
Sure. Yeah, that was – so I was a freshman at Florida that year, and we all at Florida, we were so bummed out because Cam Newton, as a lot of people like to forget, was a Florida quarterback.
He was a gator.
And, oh, my God, he was incredible. He was a more athletic than Tebow. So, like, the thing is, though, what's crazy, and Auburn fans should be the biggest Tim Tebow fans because Cam Newton was supposed to take over the starting job for the University of Florida in 2009. Tim Tebow came back for his senior year in 2009, and that's why he left to go to Blinn. That's like the whole thing. Like, a lot of people don't realize it. Everyone thought after the laptop incident he got kicked out of Florida. That's not the case. He got suspended, got in trouble, and then went to third on the depth chart behind John Brantley, which, let's be honest, like he wasn't losing his John to John Brantley. He wasn't. And so then when Tim came back, this was before the transfer portal, so like he would have to sit out a year, and waste another year eligibility. So he'd only really, but granted, he probably would have done the same thing under Urban Meyer in Florida that year, in 2009, 2010, with how great he was. So no one really knew. So like when we were watching him in Gainesville, and we're seeing John Brantley play, and we're seeing Cam Newton play, we're like, this kid's like, we were so mad. This is like
John Brantley. Jeez.
Yeah, trust me, it was not fun. It was incredible watching how good Cam Newton was. Cam Newton to this day is still I think if you give me one game and I got to pick any college quarterback from any year, I'm taking 2010 Cam Newton. I don't care. I'm not picking 2019 Joe Burrow. I'm not picking Tua. I'm not picking Mac Jones. I'm not picking Bryce. I'm picking 2010 Cam Newton because he is by himself. He took a bad Auburn football team and literally carried him. There was 2 draft picks on that team. Do you know who the other one was?
Him and Fairley.
Nick Fairley. Exactly. Those were the only 2 guys who played in the league longer than 3 years. And Nick Fairley was actually a really good player, and it sucks that he got blood clots and had to stop playing because he was actually a really good defensive tackle. But Cam Newton carried that team. That LSU team was already stacked. The Bama teams were already stacked. He's incredible.
He carried that team, even the LSU game that year. You remember he broke that long run and ran away from Patrick Peterson, who's still playing the NFL, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I think the game everyone forgets is the Georgia game. How crazy that game was because all the stuff had came out, and then is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And then he ended up playing. And then that game, I think there was like 4 different fights between like Aaron Murray and Nick Fairley and Cam Newton, and and then the coaches were like dancing on it was the weirdest game I think I've ever watched.
Trooper Taylor.
Yes.
All that.
And like it was just
fluff.
that Auburn team had no business being as good as they were. Like Alabama should have smoked them. Like I talked to Marcel Darius one time. It was probably like 2 years ago. I ran into him in Tuscaloosa and we talked, and he was like, to this day, do not ever bring up the 2010 Iron Bowl. He will eat you. It was
McElroy's the only one that talks about it. Douchebag.
You know what's funny? I was lucky enough to have a conversation with Greg in New Orleans this past year. I was in town for the LSU FSU game in week 1, and I saw him at Harris Casino, and we've crossed paths before. I didn't really know him, but we recognized each other, and so we talked, and And I for as much shit Greg gets, he's actually a really nice guy. But he's way too smart for his own good. He really is.
He's a good analyst. I give him that.
Great analyst. But just like he tries too hard to like just not be a Bama guy. Like he should be more like Reese Davis. Like just embrace it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like just have fun
Embrace
with
it, dude. You're one of the two that have led Bama to an undefeated season. You know, Saban's only had 2 of those.
Which is
all those wins
nuts.
and championships. He's only had 2 undefeated seasons.
Well, did he go undefeated at LSU that one year?
No. 13
They didn't go undefeated.
Lost to Florida. Yeah.
You're right. They did.
Florida that year.
You're right. They did. That was the.
Yeah.
Oh my
He's
God.
only had 2 undefeated seasons.
That was
09 and 20.
That wasn't even the Spur year too. That was Ron Zook. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh
That's
God.
Ron
That's
Zook.
That's embarrassing.
My bad. I forgot about that.
That's bad. I
forgot about that.
Yeah. And
all right, Cam. What's yours, Cameron?
So I've actually got a few, but I'd like to start it off with our most recent disappointing performance, and the most memorable because it's fresh in my mind was the 24-point blowout that we just received from Oklahoma in basketball.
I was just about to say, you can't mention the Oklahoma game.
Yeah, that was putrid. That was probably the worst performance. The most a top 2 team has ever been beaten by an unranked team. By an unranked team, yes, most ever. So that one was absolutely pitiful.
2 minutes into that game, we were going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Oklahoma was just shooting lights out. I don't think we would have beaten them if we would have played a good game.
They shot 68%.
But we played a bad game. Like, I mean, defensively, we just didn't know what to do. We were all over the place. It looked horrible. Our shooting was horrible for a second game in a row. I'm watching the Vanderbilt game right now. We've kind of taken a little bit of an early lead on him. Hopefully that remains. But beside that, that was kind of more of a comic one. So I'm going to take it away from Alabama just a little bit. Not to be cool. So I grew up as a big Seattle Seahawks fan because Alabama football was bad in this area. Okay. And this will lead to some of my other ones, but Alabama was bad, but the Seahawks had Sean Alexander on the team, and he was former Alabama great. And my dad
I got a Seahawks Alexander jersey.
Yep. And my dad was like, oh, this guy is, he's a former Alabama player. And so I just became this big Seahawks fan. They'd never been to the Super Bowl before, and they had this great run in 2005.
I know where you're going.
And Sean Alexander wound up winning the MVP. And they went to the Super Bowl, and I had high hopes that the Seahawks and Sean Alexander were going to win this Super Bowl. And I know Scott and Jeff are probably going to love this one. But they get there, and I think Antoine Randall L threw like a touchdown.
Ben was total trash in that game. Ben was god-awful.
And the Seattle offense that had looked so good all season just looked absolutely horrible. We wound up losing 21-10. And I just remember being a little kid so heartbroken because I'd watched this team all year and watched Sean Alexander, the former Alabama great, MVP, and then just completely choked away in the Super Bowl.
He set the then record for TDs that year.
He did.
Tomlinson broke it the next year.
And I believe that Steelers team was like the last seed in the playoffs in the AFC.
Yes, we were 6th seed. The first team to be 6th seed and go to the Super Bowl and win it. And the Giants did it a couple years later.
Ben Roethlisberger had to make a shoestring tackle on Bob Sanders in the AFC Championship, right?
It wasn't Bob Sanders. It was Nick.
Went on the goal line.
It was Nick somebody. It wasn't Bob Sanders because Bob Sanders would have just trucked Roethlisberger, but it was the guy's name was Nick something, the DB that picked up that fumble, and Roethlisberger made that string tackle, and then Vanderjagt kicked that field goal into the parking lot. I would have given him the win or tied the game or something, but he kicked it into the parking lot, and we won.
So
that defense though for the Steelers, like you're making them sound like they were a bunch of scrubs. They have I'm looking at it right now. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible Hall of Famers, couple All Pros.
Yeah.
I mean, Joey Porter, Larry Foote, Ryan Clark, Troy Polamalu, Ike Taylor, Brett Kessel, James Ferrier.
Scott.
He said Polamalu. I was like, oh dang.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying they were bad. I'm just saying the Seahawks were the number 1 seed on the NFC side, and the Steelers were the last seed on the AFC side. So I just had high hopes. And as a young kid,
I mean, yeah, but the NFC, I remember this year because this was the year. Because this was the year Seattle had beaten Carolina with Jake Delhomme to get to the playoffs. I remember, and the NFC was not good that year. They just weren't. I thought Seattle kind of like sleptwalked through that year because I remember it was a Sean Alexander show and it was Matt Hasselbeck and I just never thought Seattle was that team. But I will say Ben Roethlisberger, probably the worst game of his career.
He was awful that game.
He was really was.
Drunk, I think, from partying all week.
Well, I guess that was a huge thing because there was like a thing that came out probably like, I don't know. It was like right after he got in a motorcycle accident and like his teammates, he was such a bad egg at that point and they had such a bad taste in his mouth from Detroit that week that he lost like the locker room after that. And it took a lot to get it back. But yeah, if it wasn't for Antoine Randall being a college quarterback at Indiana,
he threw a seed to Hines Ward on that play.
That was a perfectly drawn up play. But I mean, that Pittsburgh team, I thought the year before they went on that crazy run and then they got New England. And then they came back disappointing, and then they just got hot at the right time. And that's normally what the playoffs is, just getting hot at the right time.
Ben's rookie year, we got Brady'd. And Ben's
everyone's team gets Brady'd. My team got Brady'd. Everyone does.
We've all been Brady'd. If you're an NFL fan in the last 20 years, you've been Brady'd.
Even Bama got Brady'd. Bama got Brady'd in the Orange Bowl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes. That's why I'm like, why is Tom Brady ruining my life? I mean, what did I ever do to this guy that he screws me in the Orange Bowl, and then he comes to the Patriots and he stabs me in that 0-4 game, and then he got me again in the AFC Championship game a few years later, and then he got me again when we actually had the killer bees. Like, why does this guy hate me?
Hates a lot of people. Then he came to the NFC South, and then we swept him, and then he broke my heart in the playoffs. And he sent Drew Brees in the retirement.
Dominates in the playoffs. It's like, that's what he does. So I like Brady. That's what makes it worse. What's up, Jeff?
I've got two more real quick, some honorable mentions.
Go ahead.
The Auburn Iron Bowl streak in general from 2002 to 2007.
The Tuberville streak?
That was so painful as a little kid. I was like the only Alabama fan in my class, and I just remember coming to school every November, December, and just having to hear it from all these Auburn people for 6 years straight. And that culminated the final time in the 6-game streak. The game before that, I remember I was listening on the radio. I was driving with my family back from Dothan to Enterprise back home, and I remember listening on the radio as Louisiana Monroe had a 21-14 lead in 2007. And I remember thinking,
radio too.
I remember thinking at the time, oh, we're going to come back and score a couple touchdowns and wind up beating them by 20. And we never did. And that was probably the lowest of lows in Alabama football. The first time a Sun Belt team had ever beaten an SEC team. And it wasn't even a good Sun Belt team. Like that Louisiana Monroe team was 6-6 that year. Troy, I'd gone to a Troy Louisiana Monroe game earlier in the season that Troy beat them by 3 touchdowns. That was disappointing. But I think it also like kind of set – I'm not going to say it set anything in motion. I think it was just one of those things that like Nick Saban the next year in 2008 was able to look back on and be like, tell his players, hey, remember that. You don't want to be that. You know, that's why you have to prepare.
I almost think he tanked it on purpose.
Exactly. But that game at the time, you talk about being an Alabama fan. I don't think any Alabama fan wanted to go to work the next day or on Monday, to go to school, do anything, because that was by far the most embarrassing loss in Alabama history.
So can I ask a question? Because it's like it's someone who was in high school who went to, you know, had friends Alabama, Auburn, and I was the one Florida fan. And so 2007, we were coming off a natty, and we weren't exactly that great, but Tim Tebow was, you know, winning the Heisman, and it was fun. So even though we weren't a great team, we were just fun to watch.
Did y'all lose 3 games that year?
We lost to Auburn on a walk-off kick. We lost a heartbreaker to LSU with 10 seconds left, and then we got our ass kicked by Georgia. That was the one where they stormed. And then Michigan got us in the Capital One Bowl, but that was like Greg Carr's last game.
Yep.
And Michigan came to play that game. And Tim actually had a broken right hand. Tim said when I used to work for him for a few years, he said he has never been hit harder except in 2 games. Was the 2009 SEC championship game against Bama, and then the 08 Capital One Bowl against Michigan his sophomore year. He said it was like I got hit so hard, it was like hard to get up afterwards. But my question is like when you are going through that, Saban's first year and you guys are figuring all that out. Even Saban's first year, he lost Auburn. Like, what was that like getting beat that many times, like in a row by Auburn? Because Louisiana Monroe, like, look, these crazy upsets happen. Like I've seen Florida lose to Georgia Southern. Like it's not like it happens. Like it's just it sucks too. Cause then you hear about it for like a decade and like years later, but like losing to an in-state rival that many years in a row, like how bad was it?
Well, CRUZ, what made it worse than anything is Auburn never like beat us down during that 6-game streak. It was always like a touchdown. The most it ever was
field goal.
Points. So we were always in the game, and then we just couldn't, get the offense materialized.
Couldn't close it. We had no closers.
Couldn't close it, and
Shula wasn't the guy.
And so I kind of became an Alabama fan. I was young, 2003, 2004. So for like the first 5 years of my college football fandom, I didn't know what it was like to actually beat Auburn. So it was horrible. Like we lost. Those Alabama teams, they would beat the teams that they were kind of supposed to beat, but then would lose all of the games to the LSUs, the Auburns, the Tennessees normally. It was hard.
Yeah, because when Florida and Florida State would play, I think like the longest it would probably go would be like 2 years here. And then even Ron Zook beat FSU a few times. So like it was just like kind of one of those things where it's like like you get it, but the longest losing streak to Auburn I've ever had has been 1. So it's because it's like we lost 13. Yeah. We lost 17. Which didn't matter. And then 19 and then almost 22. So it almost seems like every 3 years it something happens. So but I'm not even gonna like pretend to act like I'm not spoiled. Like I know I came into Bama at like peak time. Like my first 2 years at the University of Alabama, I got to go to back-to-back national championships. I saw 3 when I was an undergrad, so I can't really complain.
Yeah, that's true. Now you're a Gator fan too, like originally. So Franklin
born and raised
mentions this 2020 game, which we talked about today.
Oh,
that was the shoe game.
The shoe game.
Oh my God, I was at a wedding that weekend.
Who throws a shoe?
Dude,
honestly.
Dude, it was a wedding. We had just like in Birmingham, and I'm just like looking at it and I'm like, all right, Florida's gonna smoke LSU. Then next week's Atlanta for the SEC championship. It's gonna be a shootout. And then I may or may not have had a few too much to drink at the wedding. I woke up the next morning and I saw the final score and I'm like, there is no way. And then I saw how they lost and I'm like, are you kidding me? And then the fact that the kicker kicked a missile and like which looked like a mustard cloud, and like because you could not see in that game, and he boots it, and I'm like, how in the Kyle Trask threw more touchdown passes at LSU that game than he did Florida. Like it was incredible way to lose. Like that's a meme. That's a Saints way to lose. Like that's just incredible.
Well,
he's drafted, and he's actually good. The guy who threw the cleat is actually good in the pros. Marco Wilson.
Who was that?
Marco Wilson, who plays for the Arizona Cardinal, he had a fantastic rookie year this year. Like he had a great year. Like, I mean, so it was just a bonehead. It was a bonehead play by a talented player. But here's the thing: like in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't have mattered because they lost to Bama the next week. They wouldn't have gone to the playoffs, and they probably still would have gone to the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma, which they would have again got their ass kicked. No offense, other Florida fan who's in here. I'm just being real.
Well, the worst thing about that 7-game losing streak to Auburn those years was that we only really had two out of those 7 were really.
Was it 7? I thought it was like
7 in a row?
I thought it was 5. Oh, okay. I thought it was. Ooh.
So the 02 team and the 05 team were the only two teams I thought had a shot.
Oh.
02 especially, but Franchione had already taken the A&M job by the time we played that game. So, he didn't really care about that game, which it showed in the play calling and the way the team played. And then the Shula game in 05 where we were undefeated, and then Prothero got hurt in that Florida game, and our offense went completely in the tank after that, and we could barely score the rest of the season. And then Auburn had like 10 sacks that game because, this gets overlooked. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but our starting center, JB Klausner, got hurt the week before that Iron Bowl. So our backup center, which was Taylor Britt, which was Justin Britt's little brother, and Justin was a fantastic left tackle for the Franchione teams. But his younger brother Taylor was the backup center, and he couldn't block his shadow, and we just got killed in that game.
Yeah, I remember
couldn't block anyone.
Yeah, because that was 2000.
That was 05.
Yeah, you guys got sacked literally the first play of the game because you guys had this crazy stat in 05 where you literally threw on the first offensive play of the game every year, every game.
What was the bumper sticker?
Honk if you sack Croyle or something like that. Yeah, Brody Croyle, because I remember that. I think everyone in West Mobile who was an Auburn fan had one. I just remember seeing that. And no, because I remember my first ever Alabama game that I ever went to was the 05 Florida game where we just got
that was Alabama's comeback party. They announced to the world we're back.
I have never seen that, and to this day, that was my first time being at a game watching a team I love get absolutely just emasculated.
Slaughtered.
That was before Brian Denny is the kingdom it is now. It was still incredible, but it's not what it is now. And I just remember how loud it was. The first offensive play for Bama, just
Prothero.
I think 87 yards of bomb, double coverage, didn't matter, took off, and I was just like, oh no. I was just like, and I'm an 8th grader. I'm literally, me and my dad are literally the only people sitting in the section and just orange and blue. And Chris Leak threw his first interception in I think 8 games or some crazy stat like that. And we just got murdered. I've never have experienced. So that was my first experience of joyless murder ball. And then that was, what was that? 2005. So that was about 5 or 8 years before it really became a thing. But that game got me just that was a game I actually, believe it or not, fell in love with college football. Was that game, because I've never been in a football game that incredible, that kind of that environment. Even though it wasn't a good game, it was just this is what college football is all about.
I mean, we were back. That was Bama's announcement. Hey, we're back, baby. We on the cover of Sports Illustrated the next week. But Prothero broke his leg late in that game as a blowout, and that was the end. That was the end of our championship contention when he went down.
Would you consider? And I want you to answer this truthfully. Would you consider the 05 Florida game or the 08 Georgia game as back for Bama? And you have to pick between one of those two.
I'd say 08, because 05 we never capitalized. The next year Shula was fired, which we can thank Ray Perkins for having Nick Saban. Didn't Ray Perkins die recently? God rest his soul. If not for him, we never would have gotten Shula, or we never would have gotten Saban, because Ray Perkins told him not to get rid of any of his assistants. And so Shula kept them all and ran them back in 06, and we were garbage. And Mal Moore said, "You're out, dude. See ya. What changes you going to make?" He said, "I'm not going to make any." He said, "Well, thanks for stopping by." And that was the end of Shula.
There's 2 things you Alabama fans should be very thankful for. The first one is Tim Tebow deciding to go to Florida.
Yes.
Because I've talked and it's actually funny. When I first started working for Tim, I actually had this conversation with him. Be why did you go to Florida instead of Alabama? Because his entire senior year, he was gonna go to Alabama, and he was telling me if it was not for Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen and his scheme, Oh, can you hear me? Oh, did you leave me? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, sorry. I was gonna say if it wasn't for Urban Meyer's scheme and Dan Mullen coming in, they were like, hey, you're gonna play your freshman year, even though they had Chris Leak at the time, who was a
Really
good. Chris Leak was a good college quarterback. He was
He
played in the
league, but he was a good college player.
He was a good college player. Awful human being off the field. Don't even want to get into that, but like awful human being. But he came in and he was like, yeah, I was going to go to Bama, but Urban sold me on a scheme. Had Tim gone to Bama, I think Shula probably would have won enough games in 06 to keep his job, because John Parker Wilson was kind of struggling. And I looked at the stat probably like not too long ago. The 06 offense was so bad in the red zone. I think it was like second to last in the SEC that year. Tim, the QB powers was unstoppable as a freshman. You knew it was coming and you could not stop it. He would have won enough games. Yeah, jump. Oh my God, greatest, incredible. But they would have won enough games in 06 to keep Shula for another year. Saban wouldn't have came. And then the second thing that Alabama fans should be thankful for is the Miami Dolphins failing Drew Brees to coming to Miami, because
that's the key.
That is the key, because Saban is – I'm not – and this is just me off the top of my head. There's a good chance Nick Saban is still coaching in the NFL if it was not for – if Drew Brees is got cleared and not Dante Culpepper. Because that team –
Culpepper was the guy.
That team, that Dolphins team, people forget, that defense was loaded. The year before, beat the Patriots. They had the defensive player of the year in Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas, Patrick Surtain. You talk about guys who, Ronnie Brown, Ricky Williams at running back. I mean, that team was good. They were just a quarterback away. And it was just so, that's the two things, Alabama fans should just be thankful for that happened in 2005 and 2006.
I mean, so many fates were changed by that decision. The fates of Alabama, New Orleans, and Miami were all changed for a decade plus, 2 decades off that one decision. Affected so many things.
Yeah.
So many things. All right, Murph, what's your worst loss?
Oh, man. All right, like Cam, I'm going to try to sneak a few in there.
Yeah.
When I try to think, all right, so one Bama related, it was during COVID, during the year 2020, Parker. Let me paint a picture for you. All right. So all of a sudden, Bama basketball is suddenly relevant again. I haven't thought about Bama basketball since Colin Sexton played for us. Yet all of a sudden, we start winning games, and I'm stuck at home, and I need something to watch. I'm watching Bama basketball. Suddenly, we're great. And then all of a sudden, we make it into March Madness, and then we have to play UCLA.
Oh, God. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Dude,
I forgot about that one.
I got thoughts on this game.
I never thought watching Alex Reese making the most hype shot that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Thank you.
Granted, I haven't watched that much college basketball, but that was hype. Only to see it just wither away like a wet fart.
Well, you know what's so funny about that game is when Reese hit that shot, we were hyped around the living room, and I just knew we were going to go on I just knew we were going to wipe him out in overtime. I was like,
my parents care fucking less about basketball.
I'm like, we're going to blow them out in overtime now. They're done. That just
the momentum
killed any resolve they had, and the exact opposite happened.
Yes.
UCLA said, "Oh, well, okay, then we're just going to wipe these cats out," and then they just blew us out in overtime.
And was that the stupid basketball hitting the shorts call?
Yes, that was that was it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're bringing back some terrible memories.
That was horse shack, and everybody was hitting his shorts. Get that Shaq out of here.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, we're up 37-12 with 2 minutes left in the first.
Yes. Thank you.
So I was just about to say that. I was thinking at halftime.
We got on the other screen over here.
On the phone. I think everybody's got one on the side. Just right here watching.
They literally spent 30 minutes analyzing gym shorts to watch
it was the longest review. It was it was insane. And then you're completely right though. Alex Reese hitting the shot of his life and then not meaning anything.
Yeah.
Absurd.
I mean, I just knew we were going to run them out in overtime. I was like, that's it. That shot went in. That killed anything they got. But it was the opposite.
Well,
It killed all of our momentum, and UCLA blew us out in overtime.
Well, the thing is, I thought it was crazy that we were even in the game that late because Alabama wasn't hitting anything.
Free throws were awful that game.
And I remember that UCLA had shots that were like coming off the backboard threes and like these like crazy shots that were going in. So we were lucky to even have a chance at the end of that game. But that game disappointed me because they were an 11 seed. I know it's UCLA and they get good recruits, but everybody had talked Alabama up as this Final Four team that year, and it looked like the perfect scenario. It was the number 2 Alabama and then 11 seed UCLA. Like we have the advantage coming in, and we just did not play good basketball. And I realized at that point, UCLA, even though they hadn't been very good in several years, they're still getting the 5-star recruits, the 4-star recruits, the good recruits, and they proved it that night because they had some studs.
Yeah. What about you, Scott? What's your worst memory?
We actually already mentioned it. Going to go back to 2005 here against the New England Patriots on January 23rd. It was my first NFL football game.
You were at that game?
Yeah.
Oh.
-2 degrees. Tom Brady threw a dart to Deion Branch like halfway through the first. He just
Deion
it down the
Branch.
sideline. And we went home at halftime. It was 24-3 at half.
I remember Ty Law pick six Ben, like 70-yard pick six in that game.
Yeah, Rodney Harrison had a pick six too, I think.
Or maybe it was Harrison. I can't remember.
I think it was Harrison.
Ty Law, but no, Ty Law was the one in 01 when they beat us in 01 in Heinz Field. The Cordell Stewart. You know, he had such a good year and then threw 3 picks in that AFC Championship game, and Drew Bledsoe was playing for the injured Tom Brady when Brady had replaced him. And then Bledsoe came in and threw like 2 touchdowns, and we lost at home. And remember, Scott, Bettis pulled his groin, that muscle, like a week before that game. And so he was like at 50% and didn't know if he was going to play or not. And he couldn't even run.
So I was about 3 years old, probably.
That's what I was about to say.
All you young bucks don't remember Jack's Shack.
I was like, oh my gosh.
The only reason I bring up the Patriots game from 04 in particular is because it's like probably the first thing I remember about the Steelers is that year.
I mean, that was Ben's rookie year. He was 14-0 as a starter.
Yeah. I mean, we beat them by 2 touchdowns earlier in the year.
Yes.
And
Brady.
It was miserably cold. My dad parked a mile away from the stadium because he wasn't paying for parking.
That's my dad.
Wasn't going to do that. So
we're going to walk 40 minutes to the car. You can believe that. Whatever event we go to.
Just a miserable experience. But
all right. So I'm going to take y'all back two events. Okay, 2 events. The first one is non-Bama related. It's kind of the same event a few years apart. Same thing though. When I was a kid growing up in Boise, Idaho, I was born and raised in Boise, Idaho, and I'm older than all y'all. So back in the day, there wasn't no Monday night baseball, Wednesday night baseball, Sunday night baseball on ESPN. You got 2 teams on: the Cubs in the afternoon or the Braves on TBS. And the Braves were trash for like my whole childhood, but that's the only team that was on. So I watched Braves games on TBS as a kid all the time because it was the only games on at night. The Cubs played at noon on WGN. So their games are already wrapped up.
They're like the only nationally broadcasted.
Yes. on Superstation TBS, man. Skip
They
Carey.
were always on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Skip Carey, America's team. I'm like, America's team? They lose 112 games every year. But they were the only team that was on regularly,
Yeah.
So I was a big Braves fan growing up. Well, that's the only team I could watch. So when they lost to the Twins in the 91 World Series, I don't think any of y'all were born yet, but that was
win?
91.
No, I was just born. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I was 15. So I was glued to the TV watching these games. When we beat the Pirates in the NLCS, and then when they they played the Twins and went all the way to Game 7, and Jack Morris threw a 10-inning shutout, and we lost 1-0 in the 10th inning. because Bobby Cox put in. Long story, but that devastated me. And very similar. I'm a huge Yankees fan in my adult years. When I became a huge Yankees fan when Jeter came around.
Ugh.
Because I love me some Jeter. Jeter was like my favorite player, besides Canseco back in the 80s. And so I was all in it in 01, the 9/11 year, and then they played the Diamondbacks. And Game 7, Mo Rivera's in the game with a lead. It's automatic. Rivera doesn't blow saves in the postseason, and he blew the save, and the Diamondbacks won. I mean, that was as most crushed as I've been outside of an Alabama event ever. Like, because I remember telling my wife, hey, watch this last out. You're about to see history. The Yankees are about to win their 3rd championship in a row, 4th in 5 years. This is historic. You're about to see this. And then he blew it. And I threw my Yankee hat down, and it stayed on the floor for like a year till the next baseball season started.
It's very un-American for the Yankees to lose after the whole 9/11
seriously.
thing. I mean, come on. I mean, the script was there. It's like you guys come back like after 9/11. Like, I mean, come on. Like it was so meant for it. And then the Diamondbacks be like, nah.
Yes. Pro sports are
very un-American at the Diamondbacks. Like Arizona, like
Luis Gonzalez didn't read the script, I guess. Jackass.
George Bush threw the greatest opening pitch of all time.
Yes. I mean, he threw like an 80-mile-an-hour strike right down the center in a bulletproof vest. And he was in the mound going, take a shot. Take your shot right here. And then he fires a strike from the mound. People don't ever throw first pitches from the mound. Anyway, so the Bama memory my worst Bama memory, it was a really close between 94 SEC championship game against Florida and 16 championship game against Deshaun and Clemson when Jalen couldn't complete a single pass in the entire second half. And Clemson ran 99 plays on the best Alabama defense I have ever seen in my life. Ever. I'll go to my grave defending that statement. I watched the 92 season. Great defense. Those guys couldn't stay on the field with the defense in 16. Just the quality of athlete was.
I would say the closest thing would be if you're gonna have to pick one, it would be 2011 or 2016. I think 2011 was better against the run, but 2016, I mean, they just had so much speed. I like
Reuben Foster
Reuben Foster is just, to this day, the craziest person I've ever met, and I love him. Like I text him every once in a while.
Really?
Yeah. I the first time I ever met Reuben Foster was his freshman year. If you're familiar with Tuscaloosa and the campus, there's a Circle K that's right, like pretty close to Fraternity Row. And I went up there one night and he was there and literally didn't have a car. It was like just walking up there, and I was buying something and we were talking, and I noticed him because he has the Auburn forearm tattoo. So I noticed who he was. And so we talked and I invited him to a fraternity party. He like just literally rode in my car with me there. And from there, like we became friends. He is the most insane. He was like the most insane person I think I've ever seen, but he's so nice. But like, I really never knew how good he was going to be until that Leonard Fournette hit, where I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. He wasn't even a starter in that game. He was special team in that.
No, he was special teams till 2015. And then he almost didn't even get the starting job in 2015. He couldn't learn the playbook, actually.
Whatever they did in 16, they just said, see ball, hit ball.
Jeremy, here's the thing. He couldn't Kirby's system and defensive scheme was so, it was so complex that he just had a harder time understanding. Jeremy Pruitt literally just said, play zone coverage, QB spy, go hit people. That was his scheme. Like
see ball, hit ball.
Yes, that was his scheme. And honestly, that I think the 2016 defense was so good because you had these guys who were just so uber talented and just knew how to play ball that they were like a lot of it was hero ball. Like if you look like Eddie Jackson, like roam free, Mika Fitzpatrick, roam free, Jonathan Allen literally just bull rush and go.
Yes.
Deron Payne bull rush and go. And it wasn't like these complex schemes. When you had Kirby's scheme, Kirby ran a lot of zone blitzes where he would drop like Sean Han and Ashawn Robinson and Jonathan Allen into like coverage and then blitz Ryan Anderson from the side. So like Kirby's scheme was great. Tim Williams, pass rush, like literally just go. And then, but like, and it's not taking anything away from Kirby. Like, I think Kirby was a fantastic defense coordinator and a fantastic recruiter. Jeremy Pruitt, I think, just like understood to be like, these guys are freak athletes. I'm just going to let them do what they do best. And Kirby just wanted his guys to just be in his scheme, and they were great. But if you look in 2013 and 2014, when the defense started to slide, and even 2015 when we played Deshaun Watson, his scheme didn't work.
Yeah. No, 16 was Reuben Foster was the single. I love Rowe, CJ, Reggie Ragland. I love those guys. They were all fantastic. But Reuben Foster in 2016 was a wrecking ball. I've never seen somebody wreck offensive game plans on a regular basis like he did that year. He was a missile.
I still would take CJ Mosley his senior year over Reuben Foster's just because CJ was just an all-around better linebacker.
Complete.
But we're forgetting about one of the best ones, Dante Hightower.
Hightower's a beast.
Hightower was a freak.
Dante was great, but CJ Mosley started in Saban's. CJ Mosley started in his freshman year out of Theodore, Alabama, as a freshman in Saban's system. Like even with Dante and all those guys, like CJ, like unheard of. And I've known CJ since like 9th grade. He's from Mobile. He's from Theodore. Great kid. Still talk to him every once in a while. He, I think, is Saban's best linebacker ever. I think Minka Fitzpatrick and Will Anderson are Saban's best defensive players. But like you have to include CJ Mosley like in the best linebacker tier.
I was pissed when the Steelers did not draft CJ Mosley for whatever flipping reason. Did we take Shazier that year, Scott?
To be fair, Ravens.
Yeah, that sounds right.
They sharked him. Like CJ Mosley was born to be a Baltimore Raven. He was an Alabama guy. Ozzie Newsome loved him. Yeah. Like he just fit Baltimore.
But they didn't pay him what New York was going to pay him, and
no, absolutely.
Money talks in the big league level. But I was pissed when we did not draft CJ Mosley. I thought Tomlin made an egregious error by not taking CJ Mosley, and then the Ravens got him. I'm like, great, now I got to play him twice a year. Like, come on.
He'll be up here in Chicago for St. Patty's Day. I'll let him know you said that.
Hey, I wanted him to be a Steeler.
I'll let him know.
There were many years, like when we passed on Eddie Lacy for Le'Veon Bell, I was pissed off that year.
And look what happened. I think you're okay.
Yeah. I've been proven wrong a lot. But in the vacuum in that moment, like I wanted Eddie Lacy on the Steelers, and then we didn't take him. And I wanted CJ Mosley, and they took Shazier, who was good, but then, neck injury, career over. And Mosley's still balling. So, but I thought Reuben Foster, with my 2 eyeballs, just every game, he just jumped off the screen, blowing people up. That hit he put on Watson in that game where he helicoptered him. Like, we should have won that game. All we have to do is complete one pass in the second half. Just one. And Gary freaking Dieter, dude catches 100 passes for Bowling Green, and then he drops the one pass we need him to catch all year. That 1 year, he threw him one pass we needed to catch, and he drops it in the second half of that championship game.
Jalen gets, and that game is hard to be at. That was my first national championship post grad. I was the biggest blamer of Jalen for that game because he was a freshman, and a lot of it looked like it was on him. A lot of it was on Steve Sarkisian. I'm sorry, it was like that. If you go back and watch that game, like after Bo got hurt, Bama's offense was awful. Like that
killed us.
Oh my god! In this insanely true. Bo doesn't get hurt, Bama wins. I don't think we blow them out, but we win. They could not stop Bo because the way, and here's the thing: we got cute, and we started trying to do all these things like these rollouts to Jalen, and Clemson at that time had the best defensive line in the country. It worked like crazy.
That's all Jalen had was that rollout to the right every play.
He did, and it worked against these because like if it wasn't Clemson's defensive line, like that works every time because he was doing it all SEC against all the entire SEC the year before, or that season. And Clemson's defensive line was just too fast. It wasn't like their linebackers were too fast. Like Watkins and Miles Murphy and
was that the Cleveland Farrell?
Cleveland Farrell, Shaq Lawson. I mean, like these guys, like these guys were studs, and they're all still playing in the NFL. And Steve just got too cute. Now with Bo, we were able to run like the zone, like the best zone run scheme I think I've ever seen. Like the two runs that he rips off, perfectly blocked. Like, and then Jalen rolls out, which creates the decoy. And so once he gets hurt, Damian Harris wasn't Damian Harris yet. Like he just was. And I think Damian Harris is the most underrated running back in Alabama football history. Does not get the enough love and respect he gets. But
great
he wasn't
great guy,
fantastic guy. I can't wait to see what he does next year when he's not on the Patriots. And so like I'm watching that game, and then if you watch Steve, after Bo gets hurt, 3 plays later calls that trick play to OJ Howard, same play that Lane Kiffin ran, literally the same exact play. Bubble screen to Darius Stewart, takes off. You can't guard him. We did not execute or utilize OJ Howard one-on-one coverage. I thought we threw way too many screens to Calvin Ridley in a row. Like I think there was one drive we literally threw 3 screens to Calvin Ridley and only one worked. I thought Jalen was a scapegoat that game. And then if it wasn't for Jalen, in the last minute 30 of the game, we lose and he rips off. And I know I thought possibly be like, hey, like maybe go down to like the 5, but like if you're a freshman and you have a national championship in your eyes, you got to score. And if you have the best defense in college football history, they should be good enough. But Deshaun Watson, as awful as a human being as he is up there, I would say, in the top 5 of most athletic college QBs of all time. But like that 2016 defense will forever have an asterisk by it because Steve Sarkisian.
The offense. Was that the year that Saban fired Kiffin like 20 minutes before kickoff?
They didn't fire him. So it was what had happened was that Lane had already taken the FAU job. Yeah. And he started recruiting.
He struggled against Washington, and Saban booted him, I thought.
So it was a mutual walking away. I think the problem is that like the year before, Kirby had said that he would wait till after the playoffs to really start like his process into going. Lane got a head start. It rubbed Saban the wrong way, and it clearly showed because that game plan against Washington, yes, we were clearly a better team, and it showed towards the end when we actually started implementing, because that was the game Bo went off for I think like 185, like 2 touchdowns, and our defense was clearly better because they had Jake Browning at quarterback. Like we were never in doubt of winning, but we just looked sloppy. I think if Lane Kiffin calls the game, we win like easy. I think that is. I think we blow. I think we blow them out. So I think actually, I'm not blaming Saban at all, but I think that was. It was kind of a mistake on our part to be like, look, like I know this, but you don't think Lane wants to go into FAU with that? Like Saban only had 1 loss in the college football playoffs in his tenure at Alabama, and that was the Ohio State game, and that wasn't even his fault. He called a great game. Our defense couldn't stop him, and then Ohio State just went on a run. I think
Priest here.
Yeah, it was well, Landon Collins, Eddie Jackson was at corner getting worked by Michael Thomas, and Landon Collins
Zeke went for like 285 in that game.
Zeke went off, Michael Thomas went off, and then TJ Yeldon got hurt.
Yeah,
and
almost
so
got what's his name drafted from Ohio State.
Devin Smith, the wide receiver, and then Devin Lee, and then
the quarterback too.
Cardell Jones. Yeah, well, he came back another year because JT.
And then he tanked, and he was never heard from again. But I'm like, you should have gone right then, dude. Right when that game was over.
But you take the exact same game plan that Lane Kiffin had in 2015 and bring that into 2016. I think Alabama blows out Clemson. Like we're talking like 2018, what Clemson did to us, we do to them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just went like a huge rant right there.
No, that's all good. That's what we're here for, man. We rant all the time. My Bama worst memory was '94 first game in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Florida's like 8-3. Bama's undefeated, 11-0. Going to that game, we're ranked like second in the nation. And we think Dwayne Rudd picked 6 to ball that put us up 5, and Stallings kicks the extra point instead of going for 2 to put us up 7. He kicks the extra point, puts us up 6. Florida with Terry Dean at quarterback gets the ball back, goes right down the field and scores a touchdown, kicks the extra point, and win 24-23. And this was, nowadays if you lose the last game of the year, it doesn't matter. You actually can elevate your ranking. I mean, TCU lost the last game of their season, 2 out of their last 3, and actually went from 3rd to 2nd. Ohio State lost by 30 in their last game, and they didn't fall at all. So back in 94, if you lost, you're out. It was over. And we were 11-0 in that game, and we lost that game. And so we were out of the championship. We wound up in the whatever the Capital One Bowl was and played Ohio State, and we beat Ohio State. Sherman Williams had an insane game that game. We wound up 12-1, nothing to show for it, not even an SEC championship. But I was at that game and had to walk down from the very upper level of the Georgia Dome, hearing that Florida Gator chant. It's great to be a Florida Gator. That's all we heard walking all the way down those ramps. And, man, I was sick. I was like, you got to get me out of here.
Oh, that pisses a lot of people off.
Oh, that was – but, Stallings was Mr. Conservative. He was never going to go for 2 ever. Nowadays it's all analytics and there's charts. And, what's her name went for 2
Steve
second
Spurrier.
quarter the other night.
Dude, yeah. No, I was going to say Steve, when he came to Florida, Spurrier just he didn't care. He wasn't there to make friends. He hated everyone and just wanted to win by as much as possible.
That's what I like.
And that was before. Oh yeah, I love Steve Spurrier. It's probably. I don't think he gets enough. Everyone has obviously have Philip Fulmer. They got Nick Saban, Gene Stallings, Bear Bryant, but I feel like Steve gets lost in the mix a little bit.
Yeah, Steve was way ahead of his time.
Oh my God,
if his Steve was coaching today. You would see some crazy stuff.
Oh my God, his offense.
Some of the talent out there today.
He made Rex Grossman a Heisman Trophy contender.
Sexy Rexy, baby.
Sexy Rexy.
He got Danny Werfel drafted.
Okay, first of all, Danny Werfel, New Orleans Saints, great. Okay, just let's calm down. Okay, no, I think the best thing Steve Spurrier ever did was get Jesse Palmer drafted in the NFL. That was the best thing he ever did. At least Rex Grossman went to a Super Bowl. Steve,
a big Florida fan.
Jesse Palmer getting drafted that's how you were a good coach.
I mean, if you get a bachelor drafted in the NFL, you got something going.
Oh, that would be the equivalent now of. Oh man, I'm trying to think. What would that be? That would be getting. That would be getting Stetson Bennett drafted number 1 overall right now. That's that's the equivalent. Which now he's projected to go in the 3rd round. Which I swear to God, if my team drafts him, I'm going to lose my mind. But
you already know the Saints are taking Bennett. I mean, the guy's 28. Yeah. I mean, he's 3 years younger than Josh Allen, who's been in the league for 5 years.
So actually,
as long as he doesn't get arrested. Oh wait.
So it's funny. So it's funny you say that because the first mock draft actually came out. Someone sent it to me. They have the Saints taking Hendon Hooker at 29. Which I'm not gonna lie. If this was in the 2nd round, I actually wouldn't mind it.
No, that's a good 2nd round.
I think it's a good 2nd round. If I had a perfect world right now, which I don't because I'm a Saints fan, and I know we're gonna screw it up somehow, I would take one of 3 players that if we're at 29, I would take Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a younger, cheaper Alvin Kamara, and seeing what he can do in our system, I would love to see it. I would love to see Drew Sanders. Drew would be great.
He would have dominated it for us this year. The fact that we had Henry Tutu playing middle linebacker and not Drew Sanders.
So the reason Drew left, though, is because of Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner was never given that spot back. Dallas Turner is probably going to be the number 1 pick or the number 1 defensive player taking in next year's draft. Here's
what kills me, though, is Drew played inside. Dallas was outside.
Drew played outside last year, and he got hurt.
Yeah,
he got hurt.
He was outside.
Nick actually
got hurt.
Okay. Yeah, Nick actually said that if he would have stayed, he would have probably moved Drew Sanders inside.
And that would have been great. That would have been fantastic. Yeah. But Braswell and Dallas Turner next year are going to be fantastic. And then, I think Drew would be great. I love to pair him with DeMario Davis and Pete Warner for the Saints. And then, honestly, if it's possible and he falls, which there's actually a pretty good chance that he could, I wouldn't mind getting Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State if he falls.
State, yeah,
because look, you pair him with Chris Olave, and I don't know who our quarterback's going to be, but I mean, I feel like that would be pretty decent.
It can't be Dalton again. They can't run it with Dalton again.
You know what's crazy is that Andy Dalton actually finished in the top 15 in QBR this year.
I mean,
and here's the thing: no Michael Thomas injury.
Test,
it's not. It's not the eyeball test. I think I think we overcompensated for in a bad NFC, but Gibbs, I wouldn't be mad at. It just depends on what we do with Alvin. I would love Jackson Smith because I think we're actually going to trade Michael Thomas and pair him with Chris Olave, and then I wouldn't mind Drew Sanders because I think him coming off the edge with Cam Jordan getting older. I think we're probably going to let Marcus Davenport walk. And then you pair him out. Like he could be this year's TJ Watt. Like TJ Watt wasn't a high draft pick. I think he went 26, 24 or something like that.
Yeah. No, he wasn't because I was ticked 20s. When they took TJ Watt.
It was high 20s, right?
Foster.
Yeah, because Reuben Foster went 31.
Yeah, and they took Watt in the 20s because I was ticked that we took Watt and not Reuben Foster, of course.
And look how that turned out. So you're happy.
I guess that was the right move.
You have the best outside linebacker.
I mean, that once again, I've proven wrong my expert draft knowledge. Yeah. Update, it's 52-23 or 17 minutes left in the
glad I took Bama spread.
Half of the basketball game. Yeah.
I knew they were going to come out strong today. They
better.
Look.
They didn't.
I figured they would. I saw the quotes they had as far as their practices went and everything, and it looked like they were just on a mission. Practice. I would rather them get and it sucked watching them.
We needed a blowout,
but it humbled them. I think that's okay.
It was the perfect time. Non-conference game, just random Big 12 game on the road. Okay, so what? We're still in first in the SEC. Okay, fine.
That's how I kind of like when, and obviously no one likes a loss, but that's why I kind of like when Bama loses in the midway through the season, a game they're not supposed to lose, because what normally happens after that? Like I said, we've only had 2 undefeated Alabama teams, but normally what happens is that we lose a game midseason we're not supposed to, we come back. I wish that game would have been LSU. I wish that game would have been LSU, not Tennessee, because I thought Tennessee, we were the better team. Referees and I hate blaming referees, but you have
I blamed in that game.
You have 18 penalties, and I was and still overcoming it, and it's still coming down. I thought Bill Bryan's play calling in the last drive was atrocious. I know a lot of people would scapegoat Jahmyr Gibbs.
Parker's face. That tells you all you need to know.
Jahmyr Gibbs and Will Riker.
I blame Terrion Arnold. I remember seeing Jalen Hyatt running down the field.
I blame Pete Golding for putting him in that position. The moment he went off for 3 touchdowns, you put Kool-Aid on him one-on-one, and it does not matter what side of the field he's on. You put Kool-Aid.
Stay with him.
Ricks. You put Ricks in. Ricks wasn't even in that game, and
Ricks
it blows
started
my
the
mind.
next game.
He did.
I think he started the next game.
And I don't understand. And this is that whole mentality scheme-wise what I'm talking about with Pruitt and Kirby, and it's the same with Pete. When you have athletes who know how to play football, you let them do their thing.
Yeah.
And that's what Marlon Humphrey was like, hey, you go follow number 1. Or I'm trying to remember Levi Wallace or even back in the day, I know he was a boss, but D Milner, go follow their number 1.
He was great at Bama.
He was fantastic.
He was crap in the NFL.
He was
great at Bama.
He was, but he was great at hero ball. Do you know what? Marcus Peters and it still has a job in the NFL. It's and same with and actually Trayvon Diggs is the exact same way.
Yeah, all or nothing.
They play hero ball and 50-50 it pays off, but they make up for it more than it burns them. That's why.
Diggs led the league in interceptions last year, but also gave up
the most yards.
Yeah.
But he got them into the position where he won games for the Cowboys.
Yes.
So Ricks,
agreed.
I think Ricks is actually going to be a better pro than he is than he was a college player, and I wish he would have came back. But I'm just gonna go ahead and let you know, because this is everything I've heard. This secondary that is coming in for Alabama is going to be possibly the best secondary Nick Saban will ever have. We have a guy who has a chance to be Minka Fitzpatrick. We have a guy who could be Landon Collins, and we have a guy who can be the next Marlon Humphrey. And then you pair him with a guy like Arnold or
Kool-Aid
because I think Kool-Aid's going to be a first round pick next year.
Oh yeah.
And then Malachi Moore's coming back, which a lot of people forget. He had a down year, but he's coming back. Like,
he's had a down like 2 years.
He got hurt. So he had a great freshman year,
didn't he?
Then he got hurt.
Back injury or something?
No, it was a sophomore year. He got ejected from A&M. First drive of the game, gets ejected. And psychologically was never the same after that. Then he got hurt, and then Brian Branch last year just came out of nowhere and didn't just never gave his spot back. And then Malachi was playing special teams, was trying to get his rhythm back, and then just could never really get it. And then a guy that is going to make a huge splash next year is Earl Little Jr. That kid he has a chance to kind of be like this quiet Levi Wallace, will never get the love and respect he deserves, but he's just going to go out and do his job. All focus is going to be on Kool-Aid, and then he's going to be right there on the other side, shutting it down.
Yeah. I think scheme-wise will be better too. I think the scheme last year was so flawed. They just kept doing that zero blitz with Tutu, and he couldn't fight off a blocker, so it would just eliminate him out of the play immediately. In the middle of the field, it'd be wide open, and by them doing that, they would drop Will in coverage, or they'd have Will stunting the inside and try to bull rush a 350-pound guard.
If I ever see, and I don't know who our new defensive coordinator is, I'm still in the assumption it's going to be Pruitt. Everything I've heard is going to be Pruitt.
I hope so.
I've heard everything. I've heard Saban's going to bat for him. I've been told that is the plan. Todd Grantham is not going to be our DC. I don't know where this rumor came from.
Please.
He's not going to be. He is literally break in case of emergency, but he is not going to be our DC. I've heard Charlie Strong, which I would actually mind that, because if you know Charlie Strong, he is not a great head coach, but if you go back to the University of Florida days, they had the #1 rush defense in SEC history under Charlie Strong.
Yeah.
They
were solid back then.
They were fantastic back then. He's a good DC. He really is. But I still think it's going to be Pruitt. And scheme-wise, he will make those judgment calls where it's if you get – there's no way he is going to let the same single person get burned for 5 touchdowns. That's not going to happen again.
I don't know what I was watching. It was Brian Branch covered on Hyatt all game.
Pete was too scared to make an adjustment and undermine Nick Saban. When Nick Saban, what was great about Kirby and Jeremy Pruitt? They had no problem giving it back to Nick. He was scared. Same with Lane. Lane even calling offensive plays was actually not afraid to give it back to Saban. Whereas we would throw when we were up by 40, or we would call this play on a 4th and 1, but at least they had the courage of their conviction to actually stand by it. Pete just sat there terrified, and it looked like it the entire season. And you could just tell Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee. We were down 10-0 to Kansas State, and then it wasn't until Bryce I'm more glad about Pete Golding being gone than I am Bill O'Brien.
Thank you, Cruz. I've been saying it for oh my gosh. I've been telling Cameron this since he got hired. The reason why Golding stayed around so long was how good the 2020 team was, and it overshadowed so much of what the problems were. Because that defense in 2020, it wasn't all world. It was
above average. It was above average.
It was a good defense. It wasn't great.
No,
nobody was stopping Smitty that year.
Exactly. That wasn't stopping it. So
if we'd have had Waddle the whole season, it would have been even worse.
Mac Jones would have won the Heisman. It wouldn't have been Smitty. Mac Jones would have actually won it. No, you're right. That 2020 defense was good, but everyone forgets, they gave up, I think, 24 or 30 points to A&M to Kellen Mond. They got torched by Ole Miss.
Gave up 47 to Florida.
47 to Florida.
48, whatever it was.
oh God, what was it? Who else? LSU actually ran all over him as well. And then they had those, and then of course, like they had and then Georgia, like that was like the Stetson Bennett game where it's like, who the hell is Stetson Bennett? He was dotting us up till we started taking over. Like,
till we hit Waddle on that 80-yarder.
And then we just kind of like took over, and then like Stetson just started making walk-on mistakes. But like, I think Pete was in way over his head getting this job. I don't know why he ever would have got this job. I
can't believe he lasted 4 years.
I can't either. A part of me really wanted us to offer Mel Tucker the defensive coordinator job when he was at Colorado, and then he ends up going to Michigan State.
Yeah.
And now the reports coming out where if like, and you guys know this, I'm a huge Mel Tucker guy. Got a chance to interview him, got a chance to like be under him for a little bit, like when he was at Bama. Like, if Michigan State lets him go, I want him as a DC. Mel Tucker is fantastic. Like, a lot of people don't know this. Mel Tucker made Marlon Humphrey and Mika Fitzpatrick. Like, made those guys. So
I'd agree with that.
Pete was in way over his head. I think Saban. And obviously Nick Saban knows more about football than all of us combined. Mm-hmm. But I think he made a bad call on Bill O'Brien. I do. I think Bill O'Brien is the product of Tom Brady. That's it.
He's an NFL coach. Yeah, he's gotten more gigs because of Tom Brady, and he's dumpster fired every one of them.
But you know what? I actually think his scheme for Mac Jones will actually work in the NFL.
But that's actually an improvement for Mac Jones.
I think Bill O'Brien's scheme works great for the NFL. Like I do, and I'm actually excited for Mac. Like, I'm not saying like Bill O'Brien's a bum, but like in college, his scheme just didn't work. The check at the lines, running the play clock down to 4 seconds, especially on the road. The curl, the option routes for wide receivers, not utilizing our tight end, not utilizing our running backs, and letting Bryce basically just kind of play Madden back there, just kind of doing like.
Thank you, Seth. This is Seth's point. No more 1-4-6 schemes.
Never
please.
Again. No,
never again. It was
I felt like Bryce was like checking down at the line of scrimmage on every single play.
Yes, thank you.
Annoying.
That's Bill. And that was Bill's scheme.
Thank you.
It's crazy.
Thank you, Cameron.
But my thing is, in CRUZ, I'm interested to hear your opinion on this, but I'm more concerned about the quarterback situation for next season, more so than the defense or the offensive or defensive coordinator. I don't know if Jalen Milroe's the answer. I don't know if it's the recruit coming in or Ty Simpson's the guy, but
well, so there's two things that go into it, and I really think we can't start looking at the quarterback position until we know our coordinator is going to be. That's going to be the big thing. So, I know, like if we would have, for example, today, like if we would end up signing the Washington guy, Ty would have been the starter. I think Ty is the best quarterback we have. I think Jalen is a fantastic athlete. I hope he stays, but he's not a quarterback. I watched him at A&M. And if you even go back and watch that Arkansas game, the only reason we won that game is one, broke off a huge 70-yard run, and then Jahmyr Gibbs ripped off two runs over 65 yards.
See, I thought Gibbs was horribly underutilized this year.
Oh, he was. Don't even get me started. Like he
should have had 20, 25 touches every game.
He should have had 1,000, and even shouldn't have been close. And I love Jace, and I think Jace is actually going to. I think Jace is going to be all SEC this year because I think Jace is arguably the most underrated running back in the SEC. And Jace, the last couple of years, has just had guys who have just been better than him and have been more utilized, but he is going to go off this year. I'm very confident in saying that. And then with Ty is what we thought Blake Barnett was going to be. Like, that is what Ty is. Ty is a dual threat guy who can run the RPO to perfection, has dead point laser accuracy, and runs about a 4.4, 4.5, like around there. And I'm not asking my quarterback to run off for 100 yards a game like Jalen used to do, but he can get out of the pocket. Yes, and he can throw. Jalen, as great as an athlete as he is, and he has a cannon, I just don't think he can just – and the A&M game showed this, and it drove me insane. We should have blown out A&M by 40 or 35 at the worst before turnovers later causes that, and that's why it came down the last play of the game. In fact, like I don't feel like our defense gets enough credit for that game. as terrible a position we put in. If you give me, and at this point now, I don't know who our OC is going to be. I don't think it's going to be Dan Mullen.
No,
I want Cliff. Like, and
that's who I want. Thank you.
And then like
I saw your post earlier about that cracked me up.
And I know that's unrealistic, but I want Cliff Kingsbury.
Call to Thailand. Call him up.
Cliff is, and I know like people are like, oh, that's a terrible. Like he couldn't win with Patrick Mahomes, or he couldn't win with Kyler Murray. He couldn't do like all this. I'm not asking him to run it. I'm not asking him to run a team. I'm asking him to call offensive plays. If you don't believe me that he's a good offensive coordinator, I want you to go back and I want you to look at 2012 Texas A&M and look at his game plan against Alabama when they had legit defense, like CJ Mosley and Landon Collins and Mark Barron and Robert Lester. And
that was the Manziel game, right?
That was the Manziel game. And that wasn't even the Mike Evans game either. That was Ryan Swope, a walk-on.
Mike Evans game was the next year.
Yes, who lit us up. I mean, I'm talking about like the game plan he had. We were down 20-0 in the first quarter. Like he called he scripted a perfect game plan
the
and
dude
came back.
Got Ryan Tannehill drafted.
He got Patrick Mahomes like to the point like most Texas Tech quarterbacks never make it, and he got him noticed. Kyler,
think about this, Cruz.
Yes.
How many Texas Tech quarterbacks threw for like 6,000 yards? All couldn't play in the NFL.
All of them. Graham Harrell.
Including Kingsbury himself.
Yeah, Cliff. I mean, Cliff himself. Baker Mayfield.
Graham Harrell.
He got Baker Mayfield to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so I think his scheme in today's, like his offense at Arizona that he ran in the NFL, it probably doesn't work for the NFL because, one, I think Kyler Murray needs a booster seat when he drives and can't see over his offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And
plus he's a dick.
Yeah, that too, and he's too obsessed with his kill to death ratio in Call of Duty, and so he has all weapons in the world. He has all weapons in the world. If someone would actually tell Kyler Murray his touchdown to interception ratio was the same as his kill to death ratio, he'd probably throw for 50 touchdowns, but he's not.
Dude,
and
they had to put a clause in his contract to say you can't play video games.
I know, and so
he has study time.
Cliff wouldn't have to worry about that at Bama. Like Nick Saban has that. Like these guys don't go to college to play video games. They go to college to win national championships and go to the NFL
to get paid now.
Yes. And look,
what did I say at work the other day, Parker? I was like, "Give me Kingsbury," and then you posted something on Twitter, Cruz, where you're like, "Put me on the first flight to Taiwan.
I'll go get him. I'll go get him right now."
Home. I was like, I was going to tweet you. I'll drive you to the airport, dude. I'll give you a ride to the airport.
I'll probably spend a couple days in Thailand. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, but and then I'll come back with them. Though, how about that? So
as long as you come back with Cliff, I don't care what you do over there.
So from what I was told today, I know that we're interviewing a few people, and I've heard, and the name that's going to be flying around the next couple of days is going to be Joe Brady. I don't know if Joe is interested in coming here. A lot of people need to remember that Joe Brady was not the offensive coordinator at LSU when he was there. He was the passing game coordinator.
Yeah, Ensminger was who was calling all the plays. Exactly,
and a lot of people forget that. And that's my warning to people is that look, I know Joe Brady is a sexy name because you hear Joe Brady, you think 2019 LSU. All he did was just take Sean Payton's passing scheme that he learned under him and brought it to a guy who could actually implement it. My worry is,
boy, did he ever too?
Yeah, he did. But he had the perfect system to run it. Joe then went to the NFL and got fired after his first year in Carolina. That's my concern. And I know he's been, working and doing his thing lately. I this offensive coordinator job is going to be the most scrutinized job. Defensively, I think we'll be fine. I think I trust Saban enough to hire a good DC. I am concerned about our OC because we have gone from Lane to Dabble to Sark to Bill. And so and there was a recruit, and I'm not going to name him. He's a 5-star. He's from Mobile. I've had the pleasure of talking to him. He said he would have had serious commitment issues coming to Alabama if Bill O'Brien was still the offensive coordinator.
Understandable. I completely understand that.
Yeah. And any fire Bill O'Brien into the tweet into the Sun tweets I ever did, He'd be the first, as an Alabama recruit, would literally like and retweet them. So that should tell you what the recruits thought of Bill O'Brien as well.
He is not a college guy.
No, he's not. He's an
NFL.
asshole.
He was at Penn State for 2 years.
He wasn't even good at Penn State.
Wasn't even great at Penn State. Like,
he had the number one.
Dumpster fired the Texans. They still hadn't recovered from his tenure. You know,
as Jeff said, set the franchise back 20 years.
You know, Christian Hackenberger, who was the number one quarterback in high school, probably like one of the highest graded ever, blames his mental health at Penn State to Bill O'Brien as why he never worked out in the NFL. Now, granted, I can't say if he would have been a great NFL quarterback. Probably has something to do with him getting drafted to the Jets. But if he's going out of his way to blame Bill O'Brien instead of the New York Jets, that should tell you something.
I was surprised Saban made that hire. You know, when he hired him, it was down to him and Adam Gase, I think. The old Jets coach.
I would have rather taken Gase.
But Gase worked for him at LSU. So I was like, all right, Gase has college, is a college guy, and O'Brien isn't.
I think he wanted more of a QB guy because he's worked with Brady and he worked with Deshaun Watson. And I think those guys were so talented already that he couldn't fail. And Bryce was like that too.
Yeah.
But it just kind of it reared its ugly head.
If Sark would have had Bryce for 2 years,
we would be putting up 50 a game. Could you imagine Steve Sarkisian with Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, John Mechie, and oh my God, get out of here with that. Like even this year with the lack of wide receivers, what he would have done with Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, and Jermaine Burton would have been disgusting. Watch out, and Kendrick Law, like unbelievable.
It would have competed with the it would have competed Sark. It would have competed with the 2020 season with best offense if he had what in 2021 with Bryce. Bryce put up 4,500 yards and 45 touchdowns.
Oh
I thought Sark's greatest strength was matchups.
Yes, same with Lane. That's what they do now.
Saw him mismatch. I mean, Devontae Smith was open every single play that year. Was it because he was the sharpest route runner and the fastest guy on the field? No, he was schemed perfectly. I mean, the Ohio State game, they ran one play, the middle linebacker was covering him, and he just ran right by him for a touchdown. Ball over his head, touchdown, easy. Taking candy from a baby.
Hey, he's a New Orleans Saint now. Okay, like be nice to him.
Borland, wasn't that what his name was?
No, it was Warner.
Whoever it was twisted Najee's ankle on the goal line.
That was Borland. Warner was the guy who got matched up on him, which was not.
Yeah, Borland was the one because he was running as hard as he could. Bless his heart.
Which is crazy because
he was like just jogging past him.
Which is crazy because now he's probably like one of the best young linebackers in the game, and he just
anybody would love him as a linebacker, but Stark's schemes were that play where Smitty would go in motion and then immediately cut back. Yeah. And they would just dump it to him, and he would walk in. I mean, Steve
Sarkisian got Slade Bolden touchdowns. I mean, like that should tell you something.
Slade Bolden thought he could leave early and get into the draft because of Sarkisian, and then he goes undrafted and never heard from him again.
He's on the Ravens.
I think Ravens practice squad.
Practice squad.
Yeah. Well, nothing now because the season's over, but yeah.
Okay. So well, look, guys, I've had a blast. I have to go do socials for the New Orleans Pelicans game, for Barstool, so I get to watch us lose to the Denver Nuggets. But when
is Zion gonna be back?
He is getting reevaluated. He's right now. So earliest would probably be end of next week, but most realistic with it about the All-Star break coming back, it'll probably be after the All-Star break. So,
gotcha.
But I wanted to say thank you guys for having me on the show. Appreciating my rants. This was really fun.
CRUZ, this was great, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on with a bunch of strangers you never met. Like,
I've never met a stranger. What'd you say?
Is Herb Jones still with the Pelicans?
Yeah, Herb Jones is great, baby.
Yeah.
Herb, baby.
Kyra Lewis is getting really good minutes with us. The Birmingham.
He's just now coming back from his injury, right?
Yeah, and he played a fantastic game. His last game. Lewis. Dude is flying. I can't wait. I think we're gonna start incorporating a more in our lineups, especially with like Zion and Brandon Ingram and in the fast break. But I've seen a couple of mock drafts as well with us drafting Brandon Miller, which I mean, I'm okay with that as a Bama guy.
Are y'all picking second?
Probably third is where he's going to go because the 2 European players.
That one Euro guy is going number 1.
Victor. He's
Kababala, whatever his name is.
He's Giannis 2.0.
Yeah, he's like LeBron, 7-foot LeBron.
He's like a mix between Giannis and KD. He can't miss. Like he's a can't miss guy. He gets in an NBA weight room, he's fine. And then there's another guy, I can't exactly remember his name, but he's a G League guy already. But Brandon's gonna come in, and he's probably gonna go number 3. Unless an injury happens. But if he lands in New Orleans, like, look out. Like, that team's going to be incredible.
They can put him on TV more.
Absolutely. But you guys have a great rest of your show. I'm going to head out. Follow me on Twitter at CRUZ OXENREIder, the real CRUZ Ox. And we will invite me back anytime. I'd love to come back on.
Dude, thanks, CRUZ, man. Roll Tide, buddy. Thanks for everything.
CRUZ.
So we'd like to thank CRUZ OXENREIDER for coming on and just doing what we do, just rant and talk and homer and all that stuff. That's what we do. So, man, I had a great time tonight. It sucks reliving crappy memories, bad sports memories. It really is a bummer, but laughing about them now.
Chest, man. Had to get it off our
laughing
chest.
about them now. This is like couch therapy, getting out of our system, talking about it, whatever. A good friend of mine texted me earlier and said his worst sports memory was the 2011 LSU game. He was in high school in Baton Rouge. So he wasn't really a sports fan, but all his classmates were just like devastated by that 21-zip game. And he said he remembers all of his classmates just being completely devastated by it. He was upset by it, but not so much because he wasn't a diehard, fan like we are, where he would do a 3-hour podcast just ranting about LSU. But he said that was his worst sports memory from kind of a 50-50 sports fan. Happens to live in Baton Rouge, but isn't really into sports, isn't a diehard fan. But he said he remembers being in high school that day, and that next day everybody in his high school, in his class, just being like it was the end of the world. And I was like, I was actually in a really good mood. I said, I remember the next day after that game, I was in a fine mood. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Yeah, so I've had a good time reliving some of these bad memories with you guys. Obviously, we thank CRUZ for coming on.
That was good. That was real good.
Just giving us sports takes, and that's what we do here. We're just 5 BAMs giving sports takes. So the basketball team is looking rather nice. Cam, what's the score you got?
85-34.
Yeah, it's a total blow.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but
well, we needed a game like this after that.
Let's get 100. How much
We're
time
shooting
left?
near like 50% from 3.
7 minutes.
We're gonna get 100.
What'd you say, Cam? We were shooting 50%?
Yeah. Like earlier, I saw it was like we were 13 of 26 from 3. So we're having a good game.
We were dog barf at Oklahoma from 3. So
Apparently, Burnett's
shots a funny
show.
thing.
Namari.
Shots a funny thing.
Yeah. He was. He had like
Namari Burnett's
11.5.
hit every single one of his shots tonight.
Gosh.
So
Yeah.
that's
That's
big.
good to hear. I saw Burnett at 8 points earlier. So, I mean, that's
He's in double digits now. Yeah.
a good
Yeah, he's
sign.
14.
Take a look.
Oh, I'll take that.
31 for 50 from the field, 16 for 32 from 3. So
Nice.
shooting a lot better.
Noah Gurley finally made a 3. And however long it was, he took 2 shots of 3-point today.
Gurley was not the guy. It was
First
Noah
try.
Clowney. You're thinking of Noah Clowney, partner.
Well, guess what? He made 2 tonight.
That's a big because Clowney
That's
had missed
big.
like 25 in a row
Yeah.
if he hit any
I
tonight.
get the 2
So
Noahs confused.
That's easy. to do.
One of them needs to change to something else. I don't know.
Well, you guys, anything else to add before we wrap it up?
I feel like we only scratched the surface of our worst memories, but
Well, we can.
We'll
we can
dive deeper
continue.
into that.
We'll dive deeper into this. I'm not going anywhere.
we only heard like
Pain.
Cam's like top 3. So I want to hear.
We'll really dive deep into this.
Well, so I would just like to close with last week. I had the opportunity to go to the Mississippi State game in Tuscaloosa with my wife. We had a really good time, and I would just like to say it's so awesome to be able to go and get a beer in Coleman Coliseum. And I'm looking forward to college football season and being able to go get a beer in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Something I never thought I'd see, but here we are. So the game was great, and it was nice to be able to have a cold one while I was watching.
Glorious.
Amen. That's always good. And we won, although barely, but we still won. But that's not the case tonight. So well, everyone, thanks again. Those that commented in the chat all night, those that tuned in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. And thank y'all so much for giving us a couple hours of your night just to relive these, I say good memories, but they're bad memories, but we can talk about them in a better state now, even though they still bring up some old feelings. But this has been fun. We can do another show on this because I've got several bad memories that I can go over. Just not even talking about ones from back in the day. I'm talking about recent ones I can go over. So we had a really good time. Murph, Cameron, Fonzi, Parker, appreciate it again. You guys were awesome tonight. It's good drudging up these old memories. The show of our best memories will be pretty fun too.
Can we end with a to be continued screen?
See, Murph, you'll be able to appreciate this. Cruz told a story earlier about how he bought that plane ticket.
Yeah.
And of course it didn't come to fruition. Well, I did the same thing in the 97 or 2000, I think it was 2000 Stanley Cup Eastern Conference Finals. The Flyers went up on the Devils 3-1, and I bought a plane ticket to Philly and the plan was to fly up to Philly and watch the Stanley Cup Finals with all my Flyers family up here. And then we lost 3 games in a row, and I still had the plane ticket, so I had to fly up there anyway. And then we sat around watching the Devils win the Stanley Cup that year. After they came back from 3-1 to beat us in the conference finals, and I spent up to $100 on a ticket, and didn't even get to see them in the finals.
I was going to throw in my Panthers memory of watching us lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning with 3 seconds left on the clock. They slide in and literally killed all our momentum. The one season that the Panthers were relevant. And then we go in
96
and thought that was a good idea.
Probably when you were 0 years old, but they had 96.
No, it was 1 year ago.
Oh yeah, I mean you guys got just obliterated that series.
We were breaking all the records. We were the underdog. Yep.
Well, enjoy it, fellas. This was a great show. Hopefully, we'll see you guys next week. We'll have 2 more Bama wins to talk about in basketball because they're going to win tonight, and then I'll be at the game Saturday versus LSU in Baton Rouge. So hopefully we'll pull one out Saturday, and we'll come in next week off two wins and 20 wins on the season. So if anybody else got nothing else, we're going to sign off for the night. Till next time, roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.